Hi, Anusha. The first and foremost, this actually started vision almost 2 years back when in I think it was in Emirates Auditorium when I had a chat with Vinod Panikar, who rightly said that we never had a champion in District 105 till now. Okay, and one thing that we had noticed, Zoom Master, can we have the meeting room noises removed? Otherwise, it just keeps coming again and again. Okay, so one thing which he had said, noticed in some other district itself, is that in those places, the moment July 1 starts, they identify special people and start the process of becoming the world champion of public speaking. And that was something which was missing in our district. Now, we did not start from July 1 onwards, but the purpose of this whole masterclass is what we have noticed is usually some divisions they end up having a masterclass which will be a 3 or 4 hour session where people will come, will say a few things and will go, but it's not actually applied. So what we are targeting this year, and hopefully it will be taken forward in the future years, is to have concentrated sessions for each and every part. So the end objective is to get a champion from District 105, if not this year, but at least in the years to come. So it's a continuous process which we have started off with. So we're going to have specialized sessions for content, for delivery, for breaking down the judges ballot, as well as a few of your speeches will be selected and will be evaluated by the best of the best. So that is the entire reason why we are conducting this masterclass. Okay, so our only request is that the purpose why we did not open it out to the public and we wanted only a max of 50 to 60 participants is so that individual attention can be given to all. So the only request that we can give from our end, okay, is to give rapt attention to the next 1.5 to the person who I'm so glad that I'm introducing. And whatever happens, let the questions flow to DTM Vinod Panikar, and we will make sure that all your questions if are answered. If not in this session, we will make sure that a PDF is sent to you to answer all your questions for sure. So thank you so much for your attention to the next 2 hours. Now we have decided that we are going to start off with the most important session, and that is about the content. Okay, and in order to take this session forward for the next 1.5 hours, we will be having somebody who, I have to admit it, the first time that I met her was around 2 years back in Emirates Group headquarters in the same session where I had that the talk with Vinod. And I have to admit that I had a little crush on her. So the moment she walked off the stage outside, my mother and I were with me, and she had a swarm of around 20 to 30 people go and congratulate her for a wonderful session that she had done. I'm not sure if she remembers me, but I remember then, even when I met her, I did not have the courage to talk to her. So it was my mother, who all of you know, was doing most of the talking. And the reason, guys, is so we had a session where we had Mark Brown, we had Kwong, we had great leaders. But for me, somebody who touched me the most was the person that I'm introducing. The reason is she just told us the story of how she went to the World Championship of Public Speaking. She thought that she would not win the semi-finals, and because of which she did not prepare a speech for the finals. And the way she used um, both humor as well as the ability to take us on a journey is something which sets her apart from everyone else. So we couldn't find a better person to talk about the content aspect of it. She has reached the finals of the WCPS twice, once in 2016 and in 2017. And she was the first lady, first woman in District 82, which I believe covers Tamil Nadu, meaning in India, as well as Sri Lanka, to the world stage. She has done multiple roles as a speaker. She is a host, an announcer, a motivational speaker, a stand-up comedian. And two things that definitely sets her apart is her ability to take all of us on a journey and her humor. And that is definitely what content is all about. So, ladies and gentlemen, to teach all of us for the next 1.5 hours how to focus on the content part of the International Speech Ballot. All of you are going to take the next step towards becoming the WCPS through this person. Please put your hands together and welcome Toastmaster Keshika Rodrigo.
Yay, thanks. Thank you, George. Thank you, Ajita, for those words of encouragement and introduction. So I'm just going to give a minute for everyone to unmute and say a big hi so that I know that you guys didn't start off by sleeping.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
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 Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Right, wonderful. So everyone's awake. So anything happens during the next hour, it's my responsibility. I take that. So when Soumya and George gave me the title "Content is King," it didn't quite strike me. I was like, okay, it's just a title for a session. And I was just thinking about it over the week, and I was thinking, okay, content is king. Bill Gates has said it once. A few other people had said it a couple of times that content is king. But then what it struck me was when I was preparing for the presentation, there was this image that came up. It showed a chessboard, and it said content is king. The reason why I say content is king is if the king is attacked, you're checkmate. That means you've got nothing else to go forward with. So at all times, doesn't matter whatever you're doing with your speech, your content has to be secured. Your content has to be protected. And your content is the reason why you are in this game in the first place. So that was a very insightful line for me to start off with. And I thought maybe, yes, every content deserves to be treated as the king, right? So for this purpose, again, this structure was not put by me. This was something that was given to me, which I believe I twisted it, I reversed it around because it started with speech development, effectiveness, and speech value. I twisted it in order to have speech value, effectiveness, and speech development. The structure had already been given to me, and that was very thankful and thoughtful of you guys, because now I have to just take it forward from there. So in the first 20 minutes, what we'll be discussing is speech value, which is basically dissected into sort of ideas and the logic and original thought around it. And then we have effectiveness, as in how you achieve the purpose of what you started off with, and then the interest and the reception from your audience. And then we have structure, organization, etc. Right? So before we start off, or rather go to speech value, these are like 4 questions. Actually, I put it as a pointer slide for myself, but I'm sure these are pretty much the questions that sort of outline the whole structure as well. So if you were to talk about speech value, a lot of people ask me, how do I do a great speech? Or how do I write a funny speech? What I understand is that it's not about what sort of speech you are about to give. It's about what is the emotion that you actually want to get out of your audience. Is it that you want to give a very heartwarming message? Or is it that you just want to entertain your audience and, make them laugh and probably have an underlying meaning to all of it? So when you start off your speech, the first thing that you need to understand is that, okay, now I'm going to write a speech, or I'm going to decide on a speech, but what is that I expect my audience to feel? What do I want them to take home with them? What do I want them to be engaged with, right? So that is the first thing. So let's say for discussion purposes, you wanted your audience to feel motivated, right? And when you say motivated, Then the next thing is, okay, I don't have an interesting life. I don't have funny stories like the other speeches talk about. I don't have those occurrences. Sometimes I just live my life and there's nothing exciting about it, right? These are things that constantly comes up with people, and they say, like, I never killed a person, I never went to jail, I never experienced a bomb blast, I never experienced a death in my family, and so on and so forth. But my question to you is, those are not the only things that interest an audience, right? There are various other things that interest an audience, and your task is to uncover them. When I say uncover, I mean it because you don't have to create them, you just have to uncover them. And these occurrences are within your interests, right? So, after you've figured out what exactly you want your audience to feel, the next thing that you might want to do is, okay, I want my audience to feel motivated, but I don't want to specifically give a boring speech. So, then what is that one topic or what is that one message that you always wanted to discuss about? Now, when I say what is that one topic or one sort of subject that you wanted to discuss about, it doesn't necessarily mean something as complex as the galaxies and astronomy or whatever. I'm saying something simple, you know. What are the things that intrigue you? If it's not about the message, what is that one thing that interests you? Is it about planet? Is it about relationships? Is it about um, you know sort of uh, funny things? What is the one thing that sort of gets you going? What's that one thing that you really like to talk about? What interests you? What intrigues you, right? And the third point I found out was, it's always very important to have the knowledge and experience to be saying what you're saying. Now, we all know that this is definitely a sort of a speech that we're just delivering, and nobody is going to fact check with you. Nobody is going to stop you in the middle of the stage and ask, oh, but you used to work for a garment factory, how do you know about another, how do you know about advertising? Nobody is going to sort of stop you and question you when you present. But that is the very same quality that the audience have within them that turns into interest, right? So the more relatable and the more logical you sound based on your knowledge and experience, the more you will sort of have your audience with you. Yeah. So, and the fourth one is, if we're all unique people, then what's my unique story? Right? Now, like I said, a lot of people come up to me and say, my life is boring. I don't have anything to talk about. And like, even if I try to talk about, or even if I try to thing, people always figure it out. They tell you this is something that you've made up. And trust me, that has happened a million times in Toastmasters itself. A lot of people sort of copy stories, and they, sort of make it appropriate to the local context, thinking that, or maybe they know that, people already know this speech, but they try to sort of coil around it. Now, when you say speech value, and this is my favorite part, is because that here is where you ethically decide what are you going to say, what sort of value is your speech going to have, and from here onwards is what everything stems from your words, the usage of language, to everything sort of decides based on this fact, right? On how ethical your speech content is. So, in my speech, quite honestly, when I wanted to write it, I don't know how many of you know this story, but I'll keep it short, but I'll tell it anyways. When I was asked to prepare for my speech, right? this was a very rare occurrence, and I repeat, this is not to be tried at home. We had a very small club in Etisalat, Sri Lanka, which had 4 participants for the international speech contest. And apparently, back then in the rule book, if you had 4 participants, you could only issue 2 certificates, right? And my club president came up to me and said, look, we have 4 participants and we can issue only 2 certificates, but we want to issue 3 certificates. Therefore, we need 5 participants. Well, I said, well, good for you. And who's the other person? And he was like, well, I actually thought of asking you. I have been in Toastmasters for about 5 to 6 months by then. And I said, well, I don't know exactly how to participate. He said, it's similar to humorous speech contest. It's not that complicated. You can do this. It's just, whatever that you said earlier, you had an objective of making people laugh. This objective is to just deliver a message. So I went home, I thought about it. And the first thing that occurred to me is that I have an audience. So back then, because we were a small club, we weren't expecting anyone more than 10 or 15 people in the room. So the auditorium barely had about 12 people. That was a half of them just for the food. And it was fun times. So the first thing I was thinking was, apart from the food, why would people come for Toastmasters for a contest? And then I just couldn't think of something. So I said, okay, you know what? When people leave this contest, especially after my speech, I want them to go home and think about something. I want them to have a line with them that they can pass it on to somebody else, right? And me being my rebellious self, I wanted to coil the question around, who do you think you are? And for me, the speech, the opening, the question, the interest, everything was the sentence, who do you think you are? So that's mainly because I'd been asked that a couple of times in my life and I never had an answer to it. So this was actually a level of self-awareness to me as well. I kept questioning myself. Okay, a lot of people asked me this, but I never had the answer to it. Now, if I was to look for an answer, a very smart answer and a very good answer, what would that be? Right? So I kept looking, I kept Googling, I kept reading, I kept watching videos, and there were a couple of sentences that made sense, right? Don't take your dreams to your grave, and these are actually present in my speech. Don't take your dreams to your grave. Be someone better than yesterday. These are not purposely my words, but I coiled them into a sentence that actually made sense with my topic, right? So it all started with, what did I want my audience to feel, right? So I wanted my audience, one, to take out a very bold message with them and share it with someone else. And I wanted them to have an answer every time they've been asked this question. So my objective is very clear. I mean, it wasn't about, oh, what has the previous champion spoken about? I see something in you, or in you. That could have been a similar title if I wanted to. Uh, I feel something. It could have been, right? It could have been any possibility. But it's just about what relates to you. Because you can sort of start off the speech with a borrowed uh, content, but you can't present it in a borrowed feeling. Do you get what I mean? It has to be absolutely genuine. You should absolutely feel it. It should be one of your own struggles or your own achievements. And that's exactly when people connect to it. So I wanted, so my feel, what my audience wanted to feel was covered there. And what intrigued me was also that question itself, right? Because it had that very daring sort of sense, like, who do you think you are? Right? It was never used in the right context. It was always used in a context where everybody wanted to put somebody in their place. And that was the only context it was used for. And I wanted to change that paradigm shift. I wanted to make that paradigm shift of, who do you think you are when somebody questions? Nobody should be afraid of it. Everybody should be, well, try me. I am somebody that you don't know. So I know myself better. So I'll show you who I am, right? So that was the sort of interest that intrigued me. And do I have the knowledge and experience now? I didn't require specific knowledge or experience to be saying what I'm saying, because whatever I shared was very homely content. It was more of storytelling. It didn't have special sort of content that required certification or knowledge or education as such, but there are instances where when you are presenting facts, like Katani, when he said, did you know that people don't die out of smoking, they die by eating chocolate bars, right? So the reason why people sort of bought what he said was the way he presented himself. They assumed that he had, sort of done his research, and he was telling this in a platform full of Toastmasters, right? So people were like, you don't die of smoking, you die of chocolate bars. Wow. People didn't question that because at the back of their mind, they were assuming that, oh, maybe he did his research. So that is a hygiene factor. So if you are saying something of special nature, if you're sharing any particular experience and knowledge, it's very important that you have that knowledge, mainly not because anybody is going to question you. I mean, Katani could have basically with just that sentence and not correcting it either. Like, he could have just got off stage. But it's just that, if somebody went and Googled, because it's such an interesting fact, it would have been false. And that would basically bring the credibility as a speaker. It would bring down your credibility as a speaker, right? And fourth of all is, if we are all unique people, then what's my unique story, right? If you looked at my speech, who do you think you are? I completely understand when people say, I don't have a unique story, my story is just basic. I just wake up in the morning, I have my coffee, and then I go to work. I come back home, go to sleep. I don't see a story out of that. The trick is, everybody has a story. You just have to figure out how to make it a little interesting, right? You wake up in the morning, but where do you wake up? Is it an interesting place? You have your coffee, but how do you have it? Is it an interesting way? You go to work, but how do you travel to work? Is it an interesting journey? You come back home. When you come back home, is it an empty house or is there a dog to welcome you? Right? So those little things, if you paid notice, you would actually land upon very interesting facts about your life, right? And it was the same with me when I was writing Who Do You Think You Are? The fact that I questioned my dad, that wasn't such a blown up situation. It was such a hush hush warning sort of thing. My mother was like, shut up, right? But I sort of took it out of context a little bit, exaggerated it for the purpose of being able to bring out that message a little bit more and delivered it. So if you looked at it, a similar situation is absolutely present in everybody's life. I mean, are you trying to tell me that your mother has never corrected you when you were a kid? That's impossible. I mean, as Asian people from Asian countries, it's impossible that your parents don't correct you. And are you trying to tell me that none of the teachers in your life have undermined you? Well, that's their job. Teachers always undermine you. It's like it's as if they don't see the worth in you, nobody else would, right? So that's absolutely there. So you just have to find the sort of stories that actually bring these sort of sensitive uh, aspects in your life a little bit elevated, right? So I'm just gonna leave it at that and open up for questions, just so I just to make sure that nobody's sleeping. Is anybody sleeping?
No, Kashika, you'll make us all awake and we are all on our foot. So please put your questions over here. And by the time the questions come, let me ask you the question. You said something very interesting about the borrowed content,
Correct.
right? So it's something that in this, what you say, writing people say, if you copy from one author, it's plagiarism. If you copy from multiple author, it's research. And I really like the way that you put it forward, because be it Ramona Smith's Still Standing, be it Katani's Power of Words, all this have been done before. Means like what you say, the speech act theory speaks about the words have power. Les Brown always keeps on telling Still Standing.
Absolutely.
And I could relate when you said that borrowed content, how to fit it in your life, right? Is there a way to you do that? Like, what was it that you did apart from just Googling or researching?
So basically, how you fit borrowed content into your speech, if you must. Okay, this is not the most ideal way. The ideal way is to sort of hone your skills to write your speech, but if you must sort of place borrowed content in your speech, is to have the skeleton set first. You can't place the borrowed content and then build a story around it and say, this is my story. I don't think that's ethically right, because it's your story. You're saying this as a speaker, you're responsible for it. And if you say that you or your wife has lost a child, you're taking complete responsibility of emotional trauma that you're putting your audience through and your family members through. So as a speaker, you've got to be extremely responsible and ethical. Just because you have the power to say what you want to say, or just because you have the power to make people the way you want them to feel, you can't um, use content or borrowed content that does not ethically fit into your skeleton of speech. So this actually happened to me when people came up to me and said, uh, you know, unless you kill someone in your speech, you can't sort of make the audience cry. I said that's such a traumatic and such a psychotic way of wanting your audience to feel what you want to feel, because you are actually ready to kill someone in your story, which actually didn't happen to you. But if you want to sort of say it in a way that, this killed me, or this particular incident killed my dreams, or it killed me as a person, I felt really small, I felt humiliated, I feel embarrassed. Now those are sort of context or sort of situations that your audience will be able to sympathize with you, because it's you don't necessarily have to lose a person in your life to feel pain. you know if you lose a contest, you know how you feel. It's sad. I mean, you've been practicing, you've been up, your kid or your wife or your mother has made a cup of coffee for you every time you were practicing. You've practiced 100 times in front of a mirror, and all of those memories just come flushing in, and you just feel worthless. You're like, I practiced so much, but like the judges didn't see the worth in my speech, and that
So
is sad.
basically, what you're saying is first create an outline and let the content be king. Then think about the borrowed contents if it is required.
Exactly, if it is required only.
Thank you. The
But
second question is
but
from Toastmaster. Yeah,
yeah, sorry, I'll
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
continue that.
Please carry on. Please carry on, Kashika.
Um, when I say if it's required, is because I believe that everybody has the capacity to fill in their skeleton structure by themselves. But sometimes you need that word, because not all of us are eloquent in English, right? Sometimes some words are beautiful, but we don't use them too often. So sometimes when you research or when you hear someone speak it or put it in a better way, it sort of brings your idea together. It nicely weaves into an idea. So that is the sort of borrowed content that will help you grow as a speaker, not necessarily the whole paragraph or the whole chunk just placed into your structure. Just try to always look for a better way to say it. How do you say, if you were to say, I lost my job, is there a better way to say it? Is there a better sentence to say it? Read a lot, research a lot, and you definitely can bring this.
There
And
is a
you can
noise.
definitely,
Zoom master, please help us to mute that. Thank you, Kashika, for that. The
yeah.
second question comes from Toastmaster Ahanya. First of all, happy birthday, Ahanya, the birthday girl.
Happy
She,
birthday.
she is asking the question, when we talk about serious message, yet keep a touch of humor, what is the ratio or how you do it without reducing the impact of the message? And the same question was asked by Rahul also, to what extent does humor play in the role in our content? So what do you feel about the ratio of humor in an international speech?
Okay. So I feel that this question is actually few folds. It's not just one question. The fact is that a lot of people feel that humor reaches the audience a lot faster and a lot more effectively. The reason is that psychologically, people like to show that they are happy than they are sad, right? Which is also the basis for social media. If you look at the content that is shared on social media, you have a ratio of almost 98% happy content, or content that makes other people laugh, right? So that is the same psychology that applies to speaking as well. People or your audience love to show that they understand your humor and that they are very cool people who can laugh at jokes, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have a specific ratio to accommodate within your speech, right? If you have instances where you can use humor without diluting your message or without diluting the mood of your speech, you can use it to any amount, right? But you definitely have to, like I said, you must have the basic structure sorted. What do you want your audience to feel? So if you want them to feel extremely hyped up and sugar rushed, and if that's your objective, to make them laugh, and at the last minute or so, you just give out a sentence saying, you know what, life is too short, guys, just keep laughing. If that's your message, then yes, your speech will be 100% humorous. You will make people laugh, you will make them roll off their chairs. You'll just you'll actually place quite higher because you have audience reaction. But if you are saying a very serious and sincere content, and you want to add humor inside it, it's a very delicate move, because it's not easy to switch your audience from sad to laughing, or sad to happy, that fast, right? It's easy to make your audience laugh in less than uh, you know 5 seconds, 10 seconds, but it takes at least 2 minutes or 3 minutes to make them feel sad, right? So if you are putting so much effort into making them feel sad, or making them feel neutral, or making them feel concerned, and if you're diluting it with a little bit of humor, it's a very delicate space that you're treading on. So you might want to be watchful as to what sort of emotions you're maintaining at which point. So if you want to be humorous, and very very importantly, when you're trying to be serious and at the same time, if you're adding humor, your body languages might be misinterpreted also very easily. I remember this in 2016 when Katrina Boyega, I'm not too sure. She was the ninth contestant. She was the ninth contestant. She was saying something very serious. And when I mean serious, she wanted her audience to have pin drop silence and go on this journey with her, right? But because of a particular pause or the way her eyes went wide, her audience laughed. And that, as a speaker, was very unexpected for her. It just threw her off guard. She was wondering what did she do wrong. But then when we sort of did when we went back on the reel and saw, it was her eyes went extremely big at one particular sentence, and that was easily calculated as it could have been funny, it could have been serious, but because her eyes went big, the audience read it as a funny move. So it's here and there, so it's a very sensitive space, and especially
So
when you have
basically, yeah, sorry. Basically, what you're saying is it's not a max equation that we can have a ratio. It depends upon the topic that you have selected.
yep.
And the switch time is also very important to keep in mind between the emotions.
Correct.
Great. So Alka also had asked the same question, Toastmaster. Now, one of our champion, Toastmaster Peter, is asking, to what extent do you believe that mentors play a role in your public speaking development?
Okay, so I'm very bad at this question because the mentor I had is the best mentor, the mentor who let me do anything, right? So, what I believe is that as a mentor, and I'm speaking to mentors here because it's important for mentors to know their role. It's important for mentors to let their speakers experiment, right? If you are going to have a presumed world saying that, this is what champions always did, this is the way champions always moved, this is the way champions always spoke or looked or smiled or wore, you're not creating another champion, you're just creating an avatar, right? And it's very important when you're creating a champion that this champion speaker experiments what his heart or what his mind tells him to do, because that's his comfort zone. So as a mentor, your role is to thoroughly study the handbook or the rule book, right? And to know what exactly is allowed and what exactly is not allowed, and to keep your speaker posted and informed, saying, look, these are allowed, and this particular word usage or this particular volume of yours or this particular attire of yours might not be allowed, right? So it's very important that the mentor keeps track. It's like the mentor is a sort of a boundary tracker but not a speed breaker, right? So your mentor actually just diverts you from going astray to a focused goal, but he cannot be a speed breaker. He cannot just say, oh no, this is not a speech, this is not a winning speech. Or you have to help your speaker with what they believe as a content. If they feel that this is the content that speaks to their heart, as a mentor, I know it's challenging and it's not the speaker's fault, but if you've taken up the challenge as a mentor, you have to make it work. You have to push your speaker to make the best out of the content that he brings forward. And that's why a mentor speaker relationship is very important. And it's not for the mentor to just sit there and say, no, this is not working, no, this is not working. That's not the role of a mentor. The role of a mentor is to take up the challenge and say, okay, fine, if this is what speaks to your heart, let's make it work. And that's the role of a mentor.
Okay, thank you. So basically, the mentor should allow the speaker to take risk, and he or she should not be a speed breaker. But one thing that means I would like to ask over here is, sometimes the speakers come to mentor after writing their speech, and the mentors have very limited role over there, because once the speaker has put his heart out on a paper and then the mentor says anything, it is very difficult to change. So what do you think, when should a speaker go to a mentor, before the speech or after writing a speech?
Uh, so like I said, I think the the homework needs to be done in terms of speech value. Uh, what do you want your audience to feel at the end of your speech, and what is the thing that interests you, and do you have the knowledge and experience, and what is the sort of unique story you have? If you have these four things, I think that's the time you need to go to your mentor and brainstorm. It's really important. See, if you are a speaker that does not require a mentor's extensive uh, assistance, then yes, you can go ahead and write your speech and deliver it, and your mentor will be fine with it. But if you are a person who requires assistance, you need to ask for help when it's easy to help you. So I would suggest you just get your sort of thoughts together, saying that this is what I pretty much want to be saying, but I don't know how to say it. I haven't thought it through. Let's brainstorm. So you and your mentor will discuss ways and methods and probably watch a few speeches. Not only Toastmasters, there are so many TEDx speakers, there are so many motivational speakers that you can actually listen to who have great impact on their audience. So when you brainstorm, you will figure out, okay, what exactly your strength is, even as a mentor or a speaker. So it has to be a brainstorm, and afterwards you let the speaker go home and sit and write, because you've done your part of mentoring there. Afterwards, he has to just take it from there.
Okay, so basically, will the mentor and the mentee will go through the 4 checkpoints what you have said,
Yeah,
and then means they can see some videos and research something, and they can put the first draft afterwards. Great.
correct.
So I'll take 2 more questions quickly, then we'll go to the second section from Toastmaster Abdul. Basically, he's asking how you feel is important, or means what is more important when you first think of the skeleton? How you feel, or how you want the audience to feel, or
How you
should there
feel,
be something between them?
how you feel is anyway you're going to be nervous. That whether you start writing the speech or when you're delivering the speech, there's nothing you will feel. Even if you're delivering Romeo and Juliet, you will still be shivering between your knees, and you will still have the butterflies in your stomach. So what you will be feeling, you won't be feeling like, Barack Obama, dropping the mic, having that amazing feeling of, oh, I'm addressing the audience with a wave. You'll be feeling extremely nervous. So completely take that off the equation. It doesn't matter what you feel, right? Take that off the equation. What do you want your audience to feel? That's what's important. Because at that particular time or that particular point of life, you can be feeling anything. You can be feeling low. You can be feeling that you made the biggest mistake in your life, and your speech cannot help you at that point. But if you have the objective saying that, doesn't matter what I feel, this is what I want my audience to feel, that will bring in a sense of confidence within you, because you're supposed to get up, dress up, and show up on stage just because you have an objective of how to make the audience feel.
Thank you. Last question. Um, in the club and from club area and division, a speaker usually gives the same speech, and probably the judges or many of the means members might have heard that. Then how would you change the value over there? Because once you have heard a speech and again you hear it, then we have a slight disadvantage over there.
So this is something that I'm not too sure how to sort of put it forward. Sometimes what I do is I bring in surprises. Um, I don't know for it, but usually if I'm delivering the same speech, it's either this is actually a bad advice, but I don't write my speeches. I haven't written "Who do you think you are?" at all. The last time I wrote it, it just didn't work. So because I don't have a written speech, it says my internet connection. Am I unstable?
Yeah, a little bit, but it's fine.
Okay, cool. So what I feel is that because I didn't write my speech, it was easier for me to sort of change the words that I used or change the expressions I gave to change the level of energy that I had, these were minor things that I did at every speech that I delivered. So initially at club level, it's like delivering to family. So you'll anyway win it if you are the best speaker out of the three. So that's not a problem. It's like everybody is with bright eyes and big smiles looking at you as if you've achieved something extremely great. So that's not an audience to be afraid of. You don't have to try very hard or big there, right? Your challenge comes when you go to area. That's when a set of judges have already heard, or part of the audience has already heard, and there is an audience that goes from this club to that club to tell the other participants, saying that, look, watch out for this one, and these are the things, or this is the type of speech that she delivered or he delivered, so you might want to add this into that. And there are lots of Toastmasters who do this in between work that messes with speakers also. So at that particular point, it's very important to be a little tricky in terms of you change the sort of words you use, or you change the level of energy that you push in, or sometimes bring in a surprise element as well. Probably a prop, or probably uh, I don't know, sort of an element that surprises the audience. Not a huge surprise just because they saw it, but from the previous time you delivered to this time, they see a huge difference. It can be termed as improved.
Okay, we lost your voice, Kashika.
Am I audible now? Am I audible now?
Yes.
Oh,
So we means you can add a prop, or you can do some minor changes to make it look a big improvement. There are a lot of other questions, but we will take this in the end. And there are many questions that are related to delivery aspect of a speech that we will take during the delivery session. We have a next session coming up on delivery that we will be taking up on. This is purely based on content. And let's start the second section. And I have written some interesting questions that I will ask at the end. So you can continue with your second
sure.
session.
Cool. Thank you, Vinod. So effectiveness. This is something that's very important once you've sorted your first part, which is speech value. Once you've sorted that out, effectiveness is really important. By effectiveness, it doesn't matter. What I mean is, it doesn't matter how much of a good speaker you are. If you're not effective in terms of sort of throwing your content to your audience and making them available to receive your audience message, you lose your audience at a very short span, right? So how you can make your content effective is, yes, I said, how you want to make your audience feel, and you need to sort of have your story, you need to find that intrigue sort of space. uh, all of that is important, but you need to also know your audience, right? So when you say, do I know my audience well? Here are a few questions that you need to question yourself before you write a speech, right? What's the audience strength going to be like? If you're at a club level, you're probably going to have, I don't know, according to my experience, it has always been about 15 to 20 people. So it can vary. If you're like a very hush posh big Toastmaster club, you probably have like 100 or 200, right? So you have the number in. So you lock that. You have an audience of 100 or 200. Or if you're going for World Championship, it's about an audience of 2,000 to 2,000, 2,000 plus, right? And then you ask yourself, what sort of age category am I expecting? You're definitely not expecting 6-year-olds, but you're almost expecting people who are past 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, anyone who can walk and who is a Toastmaster or who likes Toastmasters is probably going to walk in, right? So you don't have control over that. So your age category starts from about 20 to whatever. So you know that very safely your audience can be considered adult, right? So that's your audience age, your audience strength, and then it's important. Now, this is very important, especially if when you're going for speeches apart from your club, if you're reaching, say, different country or different region or different continent or whatever, is what is the education level or the emotional intelligence level of your audience, right? Now, this is a little bit of a stretch. It's only valid because there are certain things that are very sensitive to a certain set of audience, right? Now, if you checked the US audience, they are more uh, sort of sensitive towards their mothers because you have a huge population that has been brought up by single mothers. So if you were to crack a less sensitive joke about your mother, they wouldn't receive it in the same sort of enthusiasm that an Asian would receive it, right? I mean, Asians, we love to sort of crack jokes about our mom, how strict they are, how crazy they get, and how insensitive they are towards our dreams, our passions, and all of that. And we've sort of built that very friendly atmosphere with our parents, and it's cool to sort of have this space where you can crack a joke about your mom, right? But on the other hand, if you said the same thing about the US moms, they wouldn't resonate with you, because they're pretty cool, they're chilled out. If you want to follow your passion, they'll let you, and they're very sensitive and they really love their moms. So this is why I say that it's very important to sort of understand who your audience is and what they believe in. What's their belief structure? Does your content offend them, or does your content sort of support their belief system, right? Um, so a few other things that you can consider when you ask questions about your audiences, that's about their emotional intelligence, their educational background, the audience strength, and the audience age category, and also a little bit about um, what your audience usually would like. Now, as a speaker, yes, right now we're talking only about Toastmasters, but if you get a chance to speak to different sets of audience, for me, it would be like uh, when it comes to the youth, what are the most trending topics? What are the words that are trending? What's the content that's trending for the youth? For all people, or for people like senior citizens, what is the sort of content that they might appreciate? And as a Toastmaster, it's quite challenging because you have to strike a balance between both. So it's important that you don't isolate the senior citizens when it comes to writing your content, and it's also important to keep your youth engaged as much as possible. So that's why it's important to understand the trending aspects of content when it comes to dealing with these categories, right? And sometimes the second question is, how do you dilute your expertise to fit an audience, right? Let's say one of you is an astronomer, right? You have amazing content. You've seen the stars, you've seen the moon, you've seen the galaxy, and you have content which is literally out of this world, right? But sadly, you're talking to people who are from Toastmasters, who are not scientists or astronomers, right? So then how do you sort of bring, if that's the thing that resonates with you the most, how do you sort of dilute your expertise into something your audience might understand? So by this, I don't mean that you need to dump your content. That's a very bad advice that a lot of people told me at the beginning. You know, your content is a little up there. You need to sort of bring it down, make it a little local. Make it a little local is true, but you don't have to dumb your content, right? You just have to support your audience to understand your expertise or the knowledge that you're trying to share with them. You know, sometimes your knowledge or the speech that you're delivering can actually change the world. But because it's so complex and because people don't understand, it just falls flat. So it's very important that you sort of maintain a very neutral platform where you don't dumb your content, you keep your content as is, but find an alternative way to sort of dilute the seriousness or the sort of too much scientific terms into normal terms or layman terms, right? And that I personally is what are my standards speaker and what are my boundaries, right? Now, as soon as I was selected into the top 10 in 2006, I was invited from so many countries. But when I say so many countries, it wasn't a lot, it was like about 10 countries. And the thing that I saw is that a lot of people would do anything to get the applause or the laughter from their audience. And I found it very pathetic because they were losing their standards as a speaker and they were pretty much moving towards becoming a performer, right? You know, some people would strip their clothes off, some people would insult their wives, or some people would, you know, I don't know. It was just not right and not ethical to be having that sort of conversation or that sort of performance on stage just in mere expectation of receiving audience applause or laughter. And you need to understand that you as a speaker, the more you maintain your standards and the more you maintain your boundaries, the more likable you become over a period of time with your audience, right? Because it's very easy to you know, say something that's offensive to someone, or it's very easy to push certain sensitive buttons in your audience and get that laughter. You know, if you're an Indian, you can put down a Pakistani and speak, and you know you can expect the Indians to laugh. But in the heart of an Indian, it's not going to work because you know they might have laughed at the spur of a moment, but it's not ethical. You know, they're not um, they're not objects that you play against each other. You don't do that. As a speaker, you have the ethical responsibility to maintain a certain standard and certain boundaries of what content will you speak about and to what level will you trigger people's emotions and to how much you will exploit their emotions as well, right? And how do I make it interesting to my audience? So this is something that I found very exciting because sometimes the speech that I delivered, who do you think you are, could have been very boring and could have fallen flat if not for my uh, vocal variation, which I spoke like a kid, I spoke like my grandmother, and I spoke like my choir teacher, the choir director, and I sang a song. I did a lot of variation with my voice. So likewise, that's just me, right? Likewise, you might have a talent or you might have a method of keeping your audience engaged, or you might have a way of making your content interesting. Like, you know, just, some people just walk up on stage and give a bright, big, wonderful, confident smile. And you know, like from the audience, I've seen this, especially from gavel clubs. I don't know where they get it from because I don't see a lot of Toastmasters doing it, but Gavaliers, they walk up to stage and they have this bright smile. Has any one of you seen that? I'm not too sure, but they have this huge, big, bright smile and they're so confident. And even if I have judged about 18 to 20 speeches previously, just because that child has a big, bright smile, and just the way he says his speech just makes you want to sit up and listen, right? So there are ways that you can make a speech interesting. If you can't do vocal variation, if you can't do a little bit of movement, if none of it works or none of it interests you, you definitely have ways that you can interest an audience. Because at the end of the day, if you have a circle of friends, that's exactly how you need to treat your audience as well. Because you don't do vocal variation with your friends, you don't do a lot of body movements with your friends. You just share your content from the bottom of your heart and they listen to you. So, what makes it a lot more difficult to share it with an audience? So, these are sort of spaces that I wanted to touch upon when it comes to effectiveness, because there, the previous one, what we spoke about was how you need to prepare. And in effectiveness, we discuss about how do you need to sort of prepare yourself for the audience. That was about the speech. This was about the audience. So this is more of, if you delivered the speech that you sort of cracked in the previous slide, how do you navigate that structure to land upon this audience that you're discussing about? That is effectiveness. How do you sort of prep your audience? How do you understand what works with them, what doesn't work with them? How long does it need to be? What sort of content do I need to restrict myself to? Who are these people? Are they too old? Are they too young? Will they understand this joke? Will they not understand? Will they appreciate this content or not? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how interesting your topic is. If you're not saying it, or if your audience doesn't value it the way it's valued with you, then you sort of fall flat in terms of effectiveness. So this is an overall sort of structure that I wanted to share with you. And I'd like to take questions if you have in any of these.
Yes, Kashika, one interesting question Peter has asked
Mhm.
about, means he's asking what was your opinion about Darren Tay wearing underpants during the competition?
Now, these are difficult situations.
So basically he's asking about means taking risk of how far you can go.
So, see, this is why I put the line, what are my standards as a speaker and what are my boundaries? I didn't draw a specific boundary for you. I'm asking only to draw a boundary for yourself, right? Me as a speaker, wearing a bra or wearing a panty on top, I don't think that might make me comfortable as a speaker. That I'll take it with a pinch of salt. It might be good, it might be bad. But Darren Tay, on the other hand, I really admire the fact of, amidst so much of criticism, amidst so much of negativity, he managed to pull it off. And that is quite stunning. Now, does that impress me to want to do the same thing? It quite definitely doesn't. But do I appreciate his confidence on stage to be able to deliver such a stunt? Yes, I do appreciate it. And I think it also comes with the content. I think his content perfectly sat with his stunt. So he might have had personal boundaries to a certain level, but I think his content also demanded him a certain extraordinary move on stage to be able to sort of establish the seriousness of the subject that he was speaking about. So it's a combination that he played with. And I think I have nothing but complete appreciation in terms of the way he delivered his speech.
Thank you. Thank you. And Peter, don't ask such questions that will put us in problems.
No, that's absolutely fine. I mean,
Okay.
I always, Darren's a good
Okay,
friend of mine.
quickly, this one. You spoke about, you gave an example of an astronomer giving a speech to a Toastmaster. So now what I understand from that is taking your knowledge and sharing it with the audience. So how important is using figurative language, metaphors, and analogies? What is the role of this in the speech? Because means even the most complex subjects can be easily delivered using analogies, metaphors, and visual imagery. So how important it is in a script, according to you?
It's important to save time, because if you were to sort of explain everything word to word, you wouldn't be landing with a 7.5 minute speech, rather a keynote speech of about 20 to 1.5 hours like mine, right? Uh, Figurative speech or sort of examples or quick sort of comparisons between things makes people understand at a very short period of time to what extent you are actually speaking about. His face was red as an orange. You didn't have to say that, his face had red patches on his cheekbones. You didn't have to sort of go to that detail. But when you say a person's face was red as an orange, oh my God, the person actually has a sickness, or it's just orange. And because you know what an orange looks like, and you know what this person in your mind looks like, and you put those together very easily. And this happens within a split second. So it saves a lot of time for a speaker to use figurative speech or comparisons, just so you will be able to get on with the next thing as fast as possible. And usually figurative speech helps because it gives a better explanation of the situation in lesser amount of words to a greater extent of expectation. Vinod,
So
you're on mute.
yeah. So basically, you are saying it saves time and it's a 7 minute speech and it's effective. That is the purpose of this presentation. Thank you.
Correct.
One good question from DTM Harish Bilji. He's asking, are we creating a speech for the audience or the judges? Now, the cliche answer is all the world champions say that it is for the audience and the message is important, but the debate is $1 million debate. I would like to hear the answer from you, Kashia.
I told you, don't ask difficult questions. But my honest answer would be write it for the audience. Mainly because you can write it for a judge, but how many judges are you going to write it for? Because judges are from different walks of life. They're from different levels of, they're of different intelligence levels. Some people are old school, some people are modern, some people like taking risks. Like in Tarantes, if he had a judging panel of, I don't know, extremely naive minded people, he would have gone face flat, right? His speech wouldn't have had the impact that it had. If you had extremely naive judges, your speech would have just completely gone, to vain. It would have been wasted. But maybe because he wrote his speech for the audience, and his topic was on bullying, if I'm not mistaken, and that was a topic that resonated with the US audience a lot, because that is a problem that they're facing. So if I am to write a speech, I would always write it for the audience, because at the end of the session, the audience, their responses, their support supersedes the judges. The judges can mark you down. You might not win the speech contest, but at the end of the contest, you can see how many of the audience flocks around which speaker. And I think that sort of gives a very strong message to the judges, even for the next time, to mark the right balance, or to mark it the right way rather. So I would say, even if you have to sacrifice once or twice of writing it for the audience, keep writing it for the audience. At the end of the day, the judges will learn their lesson. They will learn what exactly the audience loves and what the audience wants to hear, and who wins the heart uh, from the audience, which speaker.
Okay, so Iman has asked one question: how to always keep your standards and ethics and win also heart and influence. So basically, she is asking how to always keep a standard and how to influence, like speaking from heart, because somewhere you get technical in one level. So she is asking how to keep it that I want to speak from heart and how I want to speak throughout.
Right. So, speaking from the heart is a hygiene fact. It needs to be that way, anyways. But if you want to sort of, I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about a contest. It's not about. We're not talking about a space where all of you are speakers who are going out there to speak to a general audience. We're talking about contesting each other. So it's very important to know your opponent, and to also sort of practice and develop a skill that you have that nobody else might be able to match with. It could be humor, it could be vocal variation, it could be the energy, it could be your creativity, it could be your writing, it could be your stories or your storytelling power. But at the end of the day, you use all of that or one of that to deliver a message from your heart. So it does have a difficulty in terms of how many times am I supposed to do it. I never succeed. It's all about practice. The more you practice, the more connected you'll feel with your audience, and the more correct content that you deliver to your audience, the more hearts that you'll be winning. And after a certain point of time, you wouldn't have to do the rest of the tricks. Just you talking will win your audience.
Speaking from heart is basically an hygiene fact. We'll remember that. Thank you. One of our champions, Samantha, is asking a question. It's related to delivery, but still, I will ask you. I have often been given a feedback like your speech lacked emotion. How would you show genuine emotion in a speech?
Okay, when you say genuine emotion, emotion could be happy, it could be sad. I'm taking sad. I'm assuming she's referring to sad, right? So I actually experimented this with a very small audience. This was also in Dubai, if I'm not mistaken. Um, People have always said, don't sort of try to make your audience cry, or don't try to create sympathy with your audience by, saying that you
Your voice is breaking.
Hello.
Yeah, now it's
Audible?
fine.
Okay. So a lot of people, as in my mentors and senior Toastmasters, what they said was, don't try to create sympathy by saying that you lost a person in your life, or you.
Your video is stuck, Kashika. I think we lost her. I'll just.
I actually gave out my speech uh, in the context of having to lose the most closest person to my life, my dad, right? Um, a few things that I noticed while I was delivering my speech is that uh, if you lose a person genuinely, and if this person has had a lasting impression in your life, one, the reason why Toastmasters tell you that don't deliver it is because you can't deliver it, because that emotion is not something that you can sort of control or have control over if you have genuinely experienced it, right? So at this particular speech that I delivered, I spoke about my father. I spoke about his death. He was diagnosed with hepatocellular carcinoma, which was basically liver cancer. And while I was explaining his character, and I haven't even come to the fact that he's dead, I couldn't. My voice cracked. I took 4 breaks. I drank water, and my eyes started tearing, and I had to look at the ceiling, pause, then speak, look at the ceiling again, settle my eyes for tears, look around, and just keep pausing and staring, pausing and staring. And that's when I realized probably this is why, as a Toastmaster with 7.5 minutes in your hand, it's not a good idea to go with sensitive content that is close to your heart. And if it's not close to your heart, you cannot deliver sensitive content either. Right? So sensitive content can be experimented if you are sort of pushing it in a bigger space where you have about an hour, you discuss, you have the luxury of time, you can probably experiment it. But with Toastmasters, if it's a genuine sort of context that I spoke about, it's not that easy. And if you came across saying the sentence very fast and very confidently, but with a sad face, I don't think that'll sell with the audience either, because they'll figure it out that it's not a genuine emotion.
Got it. Thank you. So we'll take the rest of the questions at the end of the session where we have 15 to 20 minutes. We can go to the third part. Thank you, Kashika.
Yep. So now we come to speech development, right? So when you come to speech development, this is where you sort of, in my text, I wouldn't sort of write my speech. I would more like throw my words out there and see what I'm trying to say. Does my audience understand what I'm trying to say? I sort of experiment with my words, right? And in that process, I would, my objective is to, how do I promise my audience that I will be a good speaker? This is also called what do you call that? Eye-catching opening? No. What's the opening?
Attention grabbing or hook.
Yes, attention grabbing opening. So this is basically what I mean by, how do I promise my audience that I will be a good speaker, right? So when you are giving an attention grabbing opening, it doesn't mean that you come screaming to the audience, or you sort of do a stunt that might distract them. It's that the attention grabbing opening, as Toastmasters refer to it often, must be something that promises your audience that you will be a good speaker. So when Katani walked up on stage with a cigarette placed and a lighter in his hand, I looked at him even before he spoke. When he did that, I told my club members, he'll win. The reason being, that stunt or that particular move was good enough for me to judge that he will be a good speaker. And the rest of the speech, I only had to listen if that had a connection between the speech and his stunt. So how do you promise your audience that you will be a good speaker? It can be a sentence, it can be a question, or it can be your level of confidence too. Like I said, even the Cavaliers, when they get on stage, they don't do much. They just go up there and they smile. They have a big, bright smile, right? And sometimes that smile is so contagious, you kind of get an idea, you know what? Maybe this guy is good, right? You get an idea, maybe this guy has a better story, you know? This guy has the confidence. This guy's speech is going to be good, right? So it's very important when you're delivering to have that, to give that promise to your audience at the very start. So that's why I didn't say attention grabbing opening, and I only said, how do I promise my audience that I will be a good speaker? Because sometimes we try to do an attention grabbing opening and we sort of dilute to give an attention grabbing opening. At least promise your audience that you will be a good speaker. It can be your posture, your level of energy, your smile, the confidence, and basically to give the audience saying, hey, sit up, this is going to be good. Okay, right? And what is an ideal structure of a speech? So a lot of people ask me, do you always necessarily have to give a beginning, 3 stories, and an ending, right? Sometimes it works, sometimes you have to find what works with your audience, right? And the reason being is that not every story or not every message requires 3 stories. Sometimes the message can be delivered with 1 story, and 1 story alone can bring the gravity or the seriousness of the message. And in that context, you definitely can go with 1 story and the message. In my problem, what in my speech rather, the problem was that I had to show different instances where this particular question can be asked. So I basically took not only my school, but I took my family, I took my parents. Basically, I gave the idea that a lot of people around you can be questioning you, but you need to stand up for yourself, right? So my speech required 3 stories, but your speech, if it has only 1 story, that is more than enough, right? And on the other hand, a lot of people say, must I always say a story? Here's the answer. A story is said because people have grown listening to them, and they live listening to them, and they want to listen to them, mainly because they are beautifully wrapped packages that give out a big concept in a very beautiful way, right? So when you tell a story, you actually give a big concept wrapped in a beautiful way to your audience, which is they like to receive it because of its packaging. It's completely packed. A story has characters, a story has occurrences, incidents, a story has emotions, and all of that is beautifully packaged. So when you say a story, it's easy for the audience to take it and land it on their lap, and they'll be happy with it. Right? So that's why we go with stories. And stories mainly works with younger audience, middle-aged audience, senior audience. So must you always use a story? Not necessarily. If you can just go, delivering a speech in a very monotonous way, you can do that. But a story has the element that works with any type of audience. So that's why it's actually a proven method. That's why we use stories. And this, I think we've touched previously as well. Must you say everything you know, or what the audience really wants to know, right? So sometimes we have, I don't know if many of you have come across these characters, but there are certain characters when they tell you a story, right? I'm not talking about Toastmasters, I'm talking about people, right? People, when they tell you a story, some people go round and round and round and they don't tell you the story. When they try to explain a character, they tell this character is related to so and so, and that so and so is a politician, and that politician is the one who is actually connected to this other incident that happened. And you're trying to realize, okay, so which part of it is the story, right? So it applies here as well. When you are giving out a story, or when you're trying to tell something to your audience, tell what is relevant to the subject, and try to dissect or remove other unnecessary sort of connections. Just because You want them to sort of understand that this is a real character. You sort of go to an extent of explaining a lot about them, which is not really important, because your story must necessarily only speak about what is important, because you have a very short attention span from your audience, and you can't lose it. If you keep saying different things and confuse them, you lose their attention span. So it's very important that you say what is necessary for that story and that bit, and take it forward from there, and remove all unnecessary connections and ties around that character, just so the audience understands what exactly you're trying to say, right? And will props help win a speech? I highly doubt that props are necessary to win a speech, but if you see it fit, and if you think that you can deliver the speech better with a prop on stage that will support you, again, to save time, this was actually done by Shyam Raj at a division level contest where me and Shyam Raj were contesting. He bought a bounce back doll. I'm not sure if you know what they are. They're actually filled with air, and the more you punch them, the fiercely they come back up, right? So his speech was about, even if you fall, just dust yourself and come back up, right? So every time he was speaking, he kept punching this doll, right? Whenever he was giving a punch line, or whenever he was giving, a very serious statement, he would punch that doll and that doll would come back up. And I thought that was a brilliant prop, because had not that prop been there, nobody would have seen the level of speed that doll came back up, or the sort of the sort of emotion that he had towards that topic. It was all well placed with that punch or punch back up. I don't know what you call them, but that doll just kept coming back up every time he punched it, and it never fell. It never fell. So basically, his speech was summarized into a prop, and I thought that was brilliant prop usage. So, will it help in a speech? No. But will it help communicating your message further to your audience? Most definitely, yes. And also, when it comes to speech development, does my appearance and accent matter? This is something that a lot of people ask me. Is basically, what should I wear? Should I wear green because the background is white, or the background is black? Should I wear a black suit? All of that is important, and I'm pretty sure you can look it up on internet and figure it yourselves, right? But what I'm trying to say here is that your appearance matters till you start your speech, which means from the time you walk up the ramp to the stage, place yourself, and you look at the audience, you smile, you give a big bright smile, and you're there. Yes, your appearance matters, right? People are looking at you. People are looking at you top to bottom. They're looking at your hair, your mic placement, your costume, your shoes. Yes, everything they've been looking at. But the moment you start speaking, your audience dissects your appearance. Your skin color is being dissected. Your costume is being dissected. Your nationality is being taken off. Your age or your gender is being taken off. Your basic structure is being taken off. And there on stage, what they see is a story. What they see on stage is a message. They don't see a speaker. So that's how successful you need to be as a speaker. When you start speaking, you should dissolve as a person and be present as a story. So you can't, if your audience should be able to sort of not see your face, like literally like that, not see your face and yourself, but what they see is the character that you're representing, the character that you're talking about, the story that you're saying, the message that you're delivering. This is what they see on stage. And that is what makes it so important and so special for the audience, because at the end of the day, what they saw walking and standing on stage is a lot different from the person walking off stage, because now they have a story to this person. Now they have a picture to this person, a lot different from what they just saw as an appearance. So these are basic thoughts about speech development, and I'd like to take questions if there are any, and we
Uh,
finish with this.
Yes, thank you, Kashika. I love the sentence that you just said, dissolve as a person and be present as a story. Amazing. And related to this, because in the previous section also, you had mentioned about many speakers are becoming performers. And one of our champion, Divya, has asked this question about theatric and speaking. Like we see a lot of theater on the stage nowadays recently, and we don't want to get you into problem, or I will also not get into problem by discussing that. But to be like what you say, as a speaker, as a storyteller, means what is your take? What should we focus on more?
Okay, so what I feel is that when you're on stage to a certain level, you are supposed to perform theatrics, right? But to what extent is according to the situation. Now, if you were in a drama contest, then yes, you need to be extensive. You need to be an absolute performer, right? You have a script, you have your body, your expressions, your voice, and a lot of things come into play. But as a speaker, you are a lot limited than that. But still, for all, there are certain elements that you can use for your benefit, right? But that is a fine line between performance and presenting, right? So if you were to sort of so even using voice, the vocal variation is a part of theatrics. So I did use it, but it's a very fine line between how do you, is it as a supporting thing or does it overrule your performance or your presentation? So your message needs to be delivered, and as a supporting element, you bring a little bit of theatrics only because it helps deliver the message a lot faster to your audience. Like if I was to say, Rebecca was a 6 year old kid who was fair, who had a donkey fringe, and she spoke very sweetly. That takes a lot of sentence and a lot of time and a lot of words from me. But if I was to say, hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm 6 years old and I love poetry. Now, the way I spoke, I'm not too sure if I was audible, but the way I spoke basically gives you an idea as that this kid is really small and might be really cute. And that's all you need your audience to know. So if you can use the theatrics to your benefit to save time, to deliver the content faster, to deliver the content effectively, then yes, you can use it to your benefit. But you need to understand that this is not stage drama, this is a speech. So you need to sort of always consciously tell yourself this is not drama, this is speech. And I think you'll be fine, but you can use a little bit of theatrics for the benefit.
Okay, thank you. Timer, how much time we have got for the Q&A?
So we have 15 more minutes from
15 more
8:40
minutes.
to,
Thank you
yeah,
very much. Thank you.
8:40 to 8:55 we have time. Okay.
Okay, so we have a question from Iman, who is continuously raising hand. She is one of the most spirited and like what is it, passionate person in the entire district. She is asking that for online contest, what is your take on content? Because we do not have access to the audience. We may not know our audience very well. So how does the content changes over there, or does it changes?
Okay. So in online, if you don't see your audience, it's still for all very difficult, because uh, whether the content matters or not, you wouldn't know because you don't know your audience, you don't see them. But still for all, let me give you an example as a radio jockey, right? A radio jockey doesn't see his audience at all, right? He doesn't know whether they are listening, he doesn't know whether they're sleeping, whether they like their content or not. But what he does know for sure is that at the end of his sort of month or uh, term or whatever, he gets a report on the listenership, right? So the listenership is basically either they do extensive research, either it's because he is funny or because his content is good. Whatever he shares on radio is really good. So this is the sort of space that radio jockeys sort of aspire to be. They want to have good content so people tune into their channels a lot often, etc. Right? So that is the sort of emotion that I can tie towards online contests as well. You can't see your audience, but you assume and you sort of try to understand that this content is important for your audience to hear. So I'm not too sure how the contests are done in terms of the setup and layout, etc. But I surely know that if your content is good, you will at least have a listener who is not falling asleep for sure. Because it's really
Okay.
easy to fall asleep on online, right?
Yes, online. And one of the challenges humorous speakers keep on asking that how can we know that, like what you say, no, this is happening. So one more question: how can you bring a serious topic with right value rather than only happy messages as always advised? Means if you want to speak on some serious topic, how can
Yeah.
you bring it with right value? Means what I understand is Iman wants to give a speech which is highly emotional,
Mhm.
but it has means she wants to project it needs to have the right value. And why is it not difficult to means many people say speak happy messages only, but if somebody wants to share an emotional message, what can be the approach?
Okay. So yes, a lot of people sort of tell or advise happy messages to be given. That is because people respond to it a lot faster, I guess. But if we do have a bit of a serious subject that can be discussed, like something like global warming, you can't be laughing, or you can just you can crack a joke of how people don't take it seriously, but you can't sort of make it uh, a joke throughout, because it's not. So when you deliver something like as serious as global warming, or as serious as civil unrest, there are deeper messages that can be spoken. And this I always tell the Toastmasters also to sort of touch upon, is that there are so many topics that you can discuss, which are never discussed because the ballot boxes don't support them. Uh, my advice is to, as a speaker, when you speak about subjects that are very serious, first you must have the checkbox checked whether you have the knowledge and the experience, the extensive research done behind it, right? And one other way to get your audience attentive is to give statistics, staggering statistics, right? And also, you can drive your speech throughout with staggering statistics, and also give them the solutions, uh, how we can solve it, and probably give them the picture of how the world would be if we don't attend to it today, and tell them how easy it is to sort of make a difference by getting your audience to then and there do something. You know, just if you so basically, uh, we purchasing clothes is a huge problem for global warming. And we don't know that. We never. But the statistics, if the numbers were, if I were to have the numbers now, and if I told you that, it would get you to use your clothes more wisely and use your wardrobe more wisely, and it will help you or give you a reason why you shouldn't be buying Christmas clothes this year. So small things that we can do, if we can bring a bigger change in the world, there needs to be uh, staggering statistics, easy things that the audience can do immediately to make a difference, and also bring out a call to action as to that you're not saying this to win a speech, but you're doing this so that you and I will have an earth to live in. Bring out your objective a lot larger than the contest itself. So that's one way that you can actually go very serious without humor and happy messages, but take your message a lot faster and a lot broader to your audience.
Thank you, Kashika. So humor is not required. Like basically, if your subject is suitable, you can go, because that was the question by Toastmaster Midad also. Is humor required in every speech?
No, it's not.
Yeah. And one thing that I like heard from one of the world champions is, if you take all the great speeches in the world, none of them ever had humor. So humor is something which is the recent phenomena of 40, 50 years, and more of a paid speakers.
Correct.
So yes, one. Okay. So one something very interesting you had said, instead of using the word attention grabbing hook or expectancy violation theory, whatever it is, you used a very simple term: promise my audience that I will be a good speaker. Right. And you gave us something like, you can ask a question. The level of confidence more resonated with me, because I feel questions like a person who joins Toastmaster also starts a speech by asking question. What is your take on that? Like, what is it that you feel 2 or 3 techniques that are very effective for
Okay.
opening?
For opening, right. So my personal favorite is to go up on stage, and even if it takes a couple of seconds, to just stand and wait till the applause or everything proceeds, and just keep smiling at the audience. Now there are different types of smiles. Uh, it can be a comical smile, or it can be a confident smile. So you need to practice this in front of a mirror, just so you know how you look like when you smile, right? Because some people, when they smile, you just want to smile with them because they look funny, right? You can't help it. But there are some people who can actually manipulate their facial muscles, and it makes them look a lot more confident, right? And this is my personal favorite as to a good opening. How do I promise my audience that I'll be good? Second thing is, I really love what Katani did. uh, it was a very out of the blue move, never seen it before, at least in Toastmasters, never seen it before, and a very Hollywood sort of stunt that was performed at the very beginning showed that he might have something big in store for his speech. So that was another way that something that I really like. And the third one is, it could be just as something that is completely unexpected. um, I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but something that is completely unexpected, like asking a question or saying something that somebody else quoted. These are all expected things. And yeah, they might promise you as a good speaker, but something as unexpected as, uh, a sudden stare, or you're just going for your mic saying, it's not working. Check.
Yeah, it's
It's
working.
not
It's
working.
working. It's working.
See, even
Yeah.
you thought it was uh, so genuine. I was actually making a stunt.
Okay. It worked.
See, exactly. So if you say suddenly, during your speech at the beginning, you go, you smile and everything, you stand there, and then suddenly you go like, hello, check. Uh, Contest master, my mic is not working. And then, your audience gets excited. They're like, what? This wasn't checked. Okay, now how's the person going to react? How is the contestant going to react? And there'll be a little bit of thing. And then you can say, well, sometimes unexpected things happen. And there you go. Your attention grabbing opening, or you know, your promise of a good speaker. And then people in the audience will go like, she almost got us, just like I got you, you know. It's like something unexpected, something that people would sort of never click in their mind, or they'll easily get twisted in their head, saying, no, that's not true. That's not how it's supposed to happen. So those are three things: unexpected, a Hollywood stunt, and a confidence.
Amazing. So the opening is set. Now you gave us what to say in body, either people three different stories or story with character conflict resolution, whatever we want. What is your preference?
Out of
Three different stories or a single story?
So like I said, it depends on the seriousness of the message and how it can be. So the instance where I would use three stories is to show that this problem occurs across three different varied situations, right? And why I would use one story is because that one story is what taught me that lesson, or that one story is enough for me to deliver that message. So those are the two different. So I don't have a favorite out of them. It's just that it depends on how your message, or how your message's occurrence or scenarios are based upon. You select either of the two.
Okay. So basically it depends upon the topic. In the beginning, you had said something interesting, that you do not write your speech. What was that all about?
Okay, I don't think my mentor will like this. So my mentor, so initially, like I said, I was fifth person to join the Toastmaster contest, and I definitely didn't have time to write it. So my club level speech was not so good. I mean, it was just barely here and there. But because of the concept, so basically the skeleton structure was so good, I won the contest. And when I won it, my mentor and my club president were surprised, and they said, well, congratulations. Very rarely does a new person win, and you have done it, and we're extremely proud about you. Just deliver the same speech in next week or something area contest. So I said, okay, fine. So I delivered at area, and I won at area as well. So when I won at area, there was one at division, and they said you need to have a speech written. Um, I said, well, I haven't a speech written. Then they wanted me to write one, and I wrote one. So the problem is, I realized, is that I am Shakespeare when I write, but I'm perfectly fine when I talk. So I can't meet in a center space between the Shakespeare and myself, because when I write, I go with thee and thou and art and tis. And when I speak, I'm perfectly fine. I perfectly sound like Yoshika. So I had to give up the fact of writing the speech. I had to instead invest a lot of time in practicing it and saying it out loud, so that I have the same sort of chance as delivering the speech as a written one, as opposed to actually writing one.
So you would suggest participants to write speeches right from the club level?
So it depends. If you're a person who actually can write and deliver confidently, even if you forget a sentence in the middle, then yes, you can write. But if you're a person who memorizes, and if you miss a word, if you can't sort of remember that word, So a lot of people have this problem, right? They write the speech, they memorize it word to word, they go on stage, they forget one sentence, and then they can't continue from there. The reason being, they don't memorize it with the structure in their mind. They memorize it word to word. So when you memorize it word to word, when one thing goes off, the rest of it also collapses. But if you memorize it structure wise, which means first is I'm going to talk about this, second I'm going to talk about this, third is I'm going to talk about this, fourth is I'm going to talk about this. So that's exactly how I function. I don't memorize it word to word, but I do have an idea as to what comes first, what goes second, what goes third. And according to the color cards, I do have an idea as to I need to finish off all these three before red, or all these three before yellow, and this before green, and this before red. And when red comes on, I have three alternative closings usually. One is immediate closing. Two is I can take a chilled out one because I've almost come to the closing that I intend to. And three is abrupt closing that I need to do just so I'm not disqualified.
Okay, great. So dissolve on the stage as a person and live as a story is something that I will take home, and a lot of other things that you said, Kashika. So for the thanking message, I will, before calling on the next person, let's have a group picture. So let's show our faces, who we were, to Kashika, so that she can see who all were present today. I would
Yes,
request everyone.
please.
Kashika, you can stop sharing.
Yes, yes, let me do that. Okay. Stop sharing.
Thank you, dear. So let's see everybody's face. Even at 9 o'clock, it's glowing. So you did a good job. Let's put it on. Yes. Who is taking the picture?
I will click, don't worry.
Thank you, Elna.
Please pass it on to me as well.
Okay, give me 1 second. Can I have the most beautiful smiles?
Yay.
Okay, 1 second. Screen 1. Oh. Screen 2. And screen 3. Yes, done. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much. So the official vote of thanks will be given by the Division B director. For me, let me just wrap this up. They say that you create a masterpiece by mastering the pieces. And this was one of the pieces from the Toastmasters International Speech Contest. We wanted to make sure we get the best. And Kashika took her time and made sure that we got that piece correct. And I would officially give this back to our Division B director, one of the most humble person in our district. I know him from past 4 years, and very, very charismatic. Please put your hands together and show your emojis for our Division B director, Toastmaster Harish Krishnan. Over to you, Harish. Harish, we can't hear you.
I hear you.
Actually, I was applying a technique I learned just a while ago. I was quite, my mic was all right. I could hear everybody. Good evening to our champion trainer, Kashika, organizing committee, and most importantly, our patrons today attending this session. Thank you all for attending this very purposeful and focused session. We have passed almost 4 months of the Toastmaster year. And in this time frame, Division B and L have done several sessions, including a joint COT. But how is this session different from all that we had and yet to happen in the remaining 8 months? That's a good question, right? Let me tell you, there's a story. This is one session, I repeat, one session we discussed the very first, in fact, immediately after we got elected as division directors in somewhere last part of May. This session is so our purposeful and genuine effort to give back. by improving our aspiring speakers, leveling them up to international convention standards. So today's session is a beginning of our plans materializing. Okay. There is a saying, right? It ain't over till the fat lady sings. So yes, it's a time to thank all those who put their head and hearts behind this fruitful event. Foremost, I would like to thank our champion trainer of the evening, Kaishika Rodrigo. When her name was suggested, I was all game. Like what Stephen mentioned, her session was one session I still remember in Emirates Auditorium, 2.5 years back, I guess, where she mentioned about an interview she had in the American consulate in Colombo, if I'm not mistaken, and how she got the visa to go for the convention. See, a person with my level of recollection power, you know, if I can remember this for 2.5 years, so you can imagine how impactful her speech was that. And I, of all the people that day, I had the courage, I took the courage and went up to her and shook her hand and said, thank you for a wonderful session. And then only I left the auditorium. This is my impression on our trainer today. Thank you, Kaishika Rodrigo, again for gracefully accepting our request and being so accommodating to our request and prerequisites. Yeah, especially, and you have been a wonderful trainer this evening. And I would also like to thank DTM Divya for connecting Kaishika with us and making this happen. Thank you. Now, I would like to thank our patrons, the most important one, our members who took the time after a long working day to attend. In fact, your presence today is our reward for our efforts and arranging such sessions further. So it will only motivate us and keep supporting us, and we will do our best to make this rolling. Yeah. Now, our moderator today, DTM Vinod, as always, equally prepared, spot on with most apt questions and summarizing the content. Thank you, DTM Vinod Panikkar, also our past Division B director, for being a great moderator and to match up with our champion trainer. Thank you, our SA today, Toastmaster Ajita Sada, who is also our Assistant Division B Director, Program Quality. Thank you, our timer today, Toastmaster Elna, who is also Assistant Division L Director, Program Quality. Now, thank you again to the core team who are the real architects behind the series. Thank you, DTM Vinod Panikkar, DTM Soumya Rangarajan, DTM Sandeep Vangsarkar, DTM Vinod Raman, Toastmaster Ajita, and our CT Elna Tintu. Finally, I would like to thank my fellow Division L Director, Toastmaster Stephen George, for reintroducing this idea, which was there as a residual thought as part of our learning from the last term. So with this, I would conclude the opera and thank all of you who have been here. And it was a wonderful session. And I declare this session closed. Over to you. Now you can have a free talk, and those who want to leave can leave as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you,
So
Kaishika. Thank you.
can we say something?
Yes,
Hello,
Iman, you can
everybody.
say a lot of things. Now you are
First,
free to say anything, Iman, whatever you want.
خلاص, you stop recording? Okay. I love you, Kaishika. How are you?
I love you too, Iman. How are you?
Oh my
How are you
God.
being?